Okay, that's a thing. Thank you. Hello. Oh, thank you. And thank you. Thank you, Ancient One, for seeing me.
You're very welcome.
The Ancient One.
Pictures of the Sling Ring that will be featured in the upcoming Deadpool and Wolverine movie are starting to make the rounds on the internet, raising the question of who is wielding it. Given the complicated character-loaning relationship between the MCU and Sony, it's unlikely to be Ned, but with rumors that Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man possibly featuring in the film, well, it might be. But it's more likely to be someone who is trained in the mystic arts. Amongst the main masters of the mystic arts, Doctor Strange, Wong, or possibly Mordo seem like the likely candidates. But this movie just doesn't seem to be going for the likely options. The Everything Always channel has speculated that it might be a Sorcerer Supreme Deadpool variant, which is just crazy to even imagine, let alone possibly see on screen. But it's a good theory, because it is a multiversal Deadpool movie after all, and Deadpool movies without an MCU multiverse to fiddle with are already crazy enough. So, we wouldn't put it past such insanity. But we've got another wild theory, one that directly builds connective narrative tissue to the MCU's existing lore. What if the late Ancient One from the main MCU 616 universe was actually Cassandra Nova? And by extension, what if Cassandra Nova is the Sorceress Supreme of the Fox universe? Hear us out. Keep in mind throughout this theory breakdown that Cassandra Nova looks like this in the Deadpool and Wolverine movie, but in the comics, she looks like this. In the comics, Cassandra Nova is the so-called twin sister of Professor X, whom he battles and seemingly kills in the womb upon sensing an evil presence from her. But Jean Grey later discovers that this so-called twin of his is actually a phenomenon known as a Mamudrai, which is an astral entity that, in the legend of the alien Shi'ar culture, is described in this way. Legend says each of us faces our own personal Mamudrai in the womb, shortly before birth. It is our first experience of the alien, the other, the different. This so-called other of Professor Xavier is his darker polarity, who, as a result, has the opposite aspirations to his. Where the good professor dreams of a prosperous future for all mutant kind, Cassandra Nova is hell-bent on mutant extinction. In Grant Morrison's New X-Men, the Mamudrai entity, that is Cassandra Nova, was telepathically binded with Charles Xavier, allowing her to parasitically hijack psionic abilities that eventually allows her astral form to exit the womb and to later assume a physical form and execute upon her sinister intentions. It was an existential mutant nightmare born of the astral plane. Now, in the 616 MCU universe, the masters of the mystic arts are no strangers to the astral dimensions, demonstrating astral dimensional sliding abilities and even its weaponization.
I see through you!
Do to me?
I pushed your astral form out of your physical form.
What's in that tea? Psilocybin? LSD?
It's just tea. With a little honey.
We imagine that the one who has manipulated this skill and knowledge the longest is the Ancient One. The thing is, in the comics, the Ancient One is an Eastern mystic who is male and of Asian heritage. Due to creative decisions on the part of the Doctor Strange writers to deviate from the source material in order to avoid racial stereotyping, they opted instead to depict an androgynous, Celtic version of the character. This byproduct of an intention towards political correctness, despite its source material deviation, actually resulted in a pretty unique and curious MCU character that, in our opinion, has greater effect than her counterpart in the comics.
Arrogance and fear still keep you from learning the simplest and most significant lesson of all.
Which is?
It's not about you. When you first came to me, you asked me how I was able to...
Not a big fan of too much deviation from source material, but in the case of MCU Sorceress Supreme, it actually works really well. And if this theory turns out to be true, the Deadpool and Wolverine movie could find a convenient thread to justify the absence of mutants in the MCU that fits the existing lore. The history, origins, age, gender, or even species of the Sorceress Supreme remains mysterious in the MCU.
So, just how ancient is she?
No one knows the age of the Sorceress Supreme. Only that she's Celtic and never talks about her past.
What if she was one of the few characters existing in the main MCU universe and timeline to have an X gene, a supreme telepath who becomes the Sorcerer Supreme, a being who was born with an astral intuitiveness coupled with a talent towards latent psychic potential, a genetic gift that would have served to spearhead her mastery of the mystic arts? What if the MCU 616, Ancient One, is the Xavier of the main MCU, Cassandra Nova Xavier? So, assuming this, her life would mirror the events of the good versions of Xavier variants in other universes, with slight change in variables. Like the good Charles Xavier in other universes, she would mirror the events of seemingly killing her so-called evil twin brother in the womb. But, like the evil variant Mamudrais from other universes, her Mamudrai brother, Charles Xavier, would continue to exist in astral form, entangled telepathically with her super psychic subconscious. What if there were Xaviers existing in the main MCU 616 reality this whole time, but due to the missing variable of mutant proliferation, they assume different destinies from other universes populated by mutants? Assuming this is true, the Ancient One would never become a Professor X-type character in this universe, for a dream of mutant equality would not need to manifest in the consciousness of this Cassandra Nova Xavier variant. And by virtue of this, the Mamudrai astral form of an evil version of Charles Xavier would never get incentivized to pursue a physical form and wreak destruction upon the hopes and reality of his so-called other. Perhaps he would exist as an interdimensional threat that is hell-bent on the extinction of the mystics instead. Without completely spoiling Grant Morrison's new X-Men series, from which the Cassandra Nova character originated, we should mention that there are all sorts of host-body plot twists within the series, so we're just going to hint at that to expand upon our theory. So anyway, what if this seemingly androgynous-looking Ancient One looks androgynous because within her subconsciousness is something analogous to a psychic Siamese twins phenomena, a brother and sister rivalry that exists slightly differently throughout the multiverse, but this one where they exist within a single, corporeal form. A Mamudrai that in other universes would become the noble Charles Xavier, existing as a dark feeling buried deep within the subconsciousness of the Sorceress Supreme. A menacing telepathic entanglement that was still there, but just something she controlled, suppressed, or neutralized whenever it attempted to influence her. An entity she had been psychically battling in her mind for centuries that none would ever know of. An entity that she would never allow to escape. What if the death of the Ancient One gave an opportunity for the Mamudrai to escape and jump to another host, perhaps through the effects of the snap, or the multiversal errors of Doctor Strange, or through an incursion, or perhaps even the cross-universe hijinks of Deadpool? Whatever way, assume the Mamudrai not only jumps host, but jumps universe too. Assume that this evil astral variant of Professor X finds a way to make it to whatever universe that this Cassandra Nova is in, and then establishes another telepathic connection with this variant of his sister, infusing within her mind and body all the knowledge and experience of a Sorcerer Supreme, which he would have accumulated over uncountable years existing in the subconsciousness of the MCU Sorceress Supreme. Hence, granting this Cassandra Nova Sorcerer Supreme level skills in the mystic arts to enhance her already OP psychic abilities, creating a force that could truly be a multiversal threat of compounded evil, an evil Cassandra combined with an evil Xavier superpsionic hybrid, the best of mutant psychic manipulation and mastery of the mystic arts, including an ability to draw power from the dark dimension to extend life and youthfulness.
The dark dimension is volatile, dangerous. What if it overtook her?
She taught us it was forbidden, while she drew on its power to steal centuries of life. She did what she thought was right. The bill comes due.
But then you may ask, what host would the Mamudrai jump to upon the passing of the Ancient One, in order for it to have a vehicle to move across the multiverse in the first place? Well, if you haven't watched Doctor Strange, spoiler alert coming. The character of Mordo goes from being one of the champions and protectors of the mystic arts, and one of the most devoted disciples of the Sorceress Supreme, to then doing a complete 180 and becoming a man hell-bent on sorcerer murder. The motive is apparently explained as such: to rid the world of sorcerers who misused their powers, broke natural laws, and was unwilling to help defend reality. The intention seems logical, but murder seems like a suspiciously radicalized turn. Could there be something clouding his conscience? Remember how we mentioned that, based on our theory, the Mamudrai of the Ancient One's universe would mirror other universes by opposing mystics instead of mutants in order to antagonize its psychic sibling? Well, if the Mamudrai attached itself to Mordo, it would have the perfect vehicle to engage in the extinction of all mystics. How this Mordo, possessed by the Mamudrai, might make it to the void, or universe, of this Cassandra Nova. You can go use your imagination, but the motive kind of fits the current canon of the MCU.
Why are you doing this? Because I see at long last what's wrong with the world. Too many sorcerers.
This theory might explain not only why there is a Sling Ring portal opening in front of Cassandra Nova's Ant-Man helmet lair in the void, but it would also explain why this Cassandra Nova looks like this, and not like this. And perhaps it would also explain why the late Sorceress Supreme of the main MCU was so daring to draw power from the dark dimension to extend her life and youthfulness in the first place. An influence from a darker polarity within her subconscious that was yearning for a physical form. A curse that became a blessing.
I've hated drawing power from the dark dimension. But as you well know, sometimes one must break the rules in order to serve the greater good.
Mordo won't see it that way.
Mordo's soul is rigid and unmovable, forged by the fires of his youth. He needs your flexibility, just as you need his strength. Only together do you stand a chance of stopping Dormammu.
On a side note, if this theory turns out to be true, we have a follow-up theory that the defeat of Cassandra Nova in Deadpool and Wolverine could lead to the evil Professor Xavier's astral form escaping, and possibly merging with Magneto, laying the groundwork for an Onslaught saga, where a Magneto-Xavier fusion-like psionic phenomena known as Onslaught is born of the darker side of the Professor's psyche. I mean, speculations of an Avengers vs. X-Men movie is being teased in the rumor mill, so just putting it out there, but that's maybe another video. Just to wrap up, we get that this theory is plagued with the MCU gender-swapping stigma. We're not anti-diversity, but like we said, we're not the biggest fans of too much deviation from source material, but it all depends on the writing. The MCU is kind of messy at the moment, which is kind of why Disney is banking on Deadpool to, clean things up a little, in the bloodiest way. And if Deadpool can take the broken pieces of the old Fox properties and parts of the MCU and recycle it into something better, well, anything goes. So, anyway, it's a wild theory and is unlikely to be what happens in the film. But we like to speculate. Reynolds and Levy probably just wanted to have a hotter version of Cassandra to counterbalance Deadpool's avocado face. Either way, this film is looking good.
She's dead.
You were right. She wasn't who I thought she was.
She was complicated.
Complicated.
Boys are so silly.
This is what I'm talking about.